Hello everyone and welcome to our mini version of Grand Rounds. My name is Krisher, the Associate Director for Behavioral Health, and today we are going to be talking about what you need to know about adult learning theory. During our conversation today, we are going to cover three topics. First, I'll give you a little background about the basics of adult learning theory. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about the types of learners we might encounter, and then we'll wrap up our time with some teaching strategies for adult learners. One of my favorite things to do when I'm teaching is to tell people a little bit more about me as a person. So I have a couple images here to share with you, and that'll give you a little bit more about who I am outside of my working hours. So in these two pictures here, you can see that I am a wife. I'm a mom to both a daughter as well as our dog Winnie. I am also a sister. I'm a daughter myself and an aunt. This is my family here celebrating my niece's 8th birthday. I'm a worker here at NCOA, and we have a little joke about being chaos coordinators, making sure we're keeping everything under control. I think it also sometimes applies to being a parent. And a recent development in my life is I have become a dancer, incorporating a previous love into what I'm doing now for self-care. And this is me performing during our annual dance recital with some of my other fellow adult dancers. So let's dive in and talk about what is adult learning theory and why is it so important? As we are working with our participants in our evidence-based programs, we need to be able to understand what is going to help the information stick. How do we make sure that the things that we are teaching and reviewing and managing with our participants are actually staying in their brains? Let's look a little closer at what the definition of adult learning theory is. This is a theory that was developed by Malcolm Knowles in 1980, and it really focuses on the differences between the way adults learn versus children. And what he found is that there's three main components to adult learning. One is the motivation. What is going to motivate that adult to want to learn something new? Two is relevancy. How relevant is the information for this adult? Is it going to help them manage some challenge that they need to right now? And three, application. So we're looking at how do we apply this knowledge here and now in that moment. So adult learning theory really is going to focus on understanding why we're doing something. And how we're going to do that learning is with hands-on experiences and less instruction. So when we think about adult learning theory, we're really talking about getting adults to learn by doing. How do we engage them in that learning so that they have an opportunity to see it firsthand and understand why it's important? There are 6 important assumptions related to adult learning. The first is need to know. As adults, we want to know why we are learning something before we're going to be willing to do that. Really build on the motivation of the person. The second is self-concept. Adults want to be seen and treated as if we're capable and self-directed. The more power that we can give to that person in the learning experience, the more likely they are to engage in it. We need to think about what that person's experience has been regarding learning. And when we can tap into that individual experience, that's going to motivate that person to learn something new. It's going to be beneficial not only for the learner, but also for the person who's supporting that learning. We need to know how ready they are to learn. If we think about what makes us want to learn things as an adult, it's that we want to be able to solve problems right now in real time. So when we are teaching someone a skill or a way to cope with a real life situation, their readiness to learn is going to be higher. We also need to look at their orientation to learning. And remember that we want to learn things that are going to help us perform better and manage problems. So again, tying it back to how is this going to help make the situation better is going to motivate that adult learner more. And then finally, we've kind of pulling it all together with this concept of motivation. What is the internal motivation for this person? Is it that we're going to increase their self-esteem? Is it that we're going to increase satisfaction some way? We really want to build on what are the things that are going to motivate this person individually to learn something new. And once we can tap into that motivation, we'll be able to really engage that person in the learning process. We also need to know what that person's learning style is. And there's 3 different types of learning that we should be aware of. The first is a person who is a visual learner. This is someone who's going to prefer to see those lesson materials in forms like graphs, diagrams, images, charts, and they're typically those people who are going to sit in the front of the room. They want to be able to visually see the information. Next, we have auditory learners. These are people who learn by listening. So they're going to be really paying attention to the tone of your voice, the sounds that are in the room. And these are the people who are actively going to be participating in the discussion because that talking and hearing is going to help them process the information. Finally, we have people who prefer tactile learning. This is our kinesthetic learners, or people who learn by doing or feeling. So it's really about getting them to do those hands-on experiences. This is typically the group of learners who are going to volunteer to be a guinea pig in a class. So they might volunteer for the role playing, they might be the person who's willing to write on the dry erase board or whatever the case might be. These are people who are going to be taking that information in through other forms that is using their hands. So what strategies can we use when we're teaching adult learners? There's a lot of different strategies that we can use, and I've pulled together just a few to kind of get our wheels turning and some ideas flowing for us. The first thing is to make sure that the material is relevant. Again, going back to that motivation of the person, what's the problem that we're trying to solve for them in that moment? How do we make the material relevant? Second, telling stories. Talk about other participants who have had success with a particular intervention, or maybe somebody who has engaged in a different way because of the lessons that they learned in an evidence-based program. Tell those stories. Make the situation real for people. If you can use yourself, even better. If not, use past participants. Another important piece is breaking up the content so we avoid that cognitive overload. It's really difficult to get anyone to sit for a long period of time and just have someone share information. So find ways to bring in activities throughout that conversation. Stop and have a small group conversation, or engage in an icebreaker activity to get the event started. Make sure that you're taking those breaks and those pauses so that people have time to process the information before we add additional information in. It's really important to get everyone involved. This has a little bit of a caveat to me because there may be some people who feel more comfortable being involved than others. So if you have a person who doesn't really quite seem that comfortable getting super involved in the conversation, are there other ways that you can engage that person? Can you ask them to hand out materials, or maybe have a one-to-one conversation with somebody instead of having a conversation in the group? Either way, it's really important to make sure that everyone has a voice and that they are able to engage to the level that they are comfortable. Finding ways to engage participants. This is going to be different for every single person. We just talked about those different types of learners. So the more that we can incorporate ways of learning that would appeal to all of those types of learners, we're going to have more success in engaging our participants. So thinking about what are those activities, what are those hands-on experiences that we can give that person, what are different ways that we can show the information visually or get people to discuss it in a different way. Making sure that we are offering those opportunities for engagement is going to help make that information more real for the person. We also want to try to bring the learner's life experience into our conversations. So we can ask people to tell us, what was this experience like for you? Or can you share a time when this information was really helpful or you wished that you knew something different? And when we know that information about the person, then we will be able to really engage with them in a different way because we're now turning that into a person-centered learning experience. We're taking that knowledge and we're applying it into our teaching strategies. We talked a little bit about this already, but this idea of incorporating activities that are relevant to their learning style. So if you know you have a bunch of visual learners in your room, let's find ways to make sure we have that visual information available to them. If your group is a group of people who really like to learn by doing, find those tactile experiences that will engage them. Do role-playing activities, do group discussions, find ways to use those strengths of learning types in incorporating the knowledge that you're wanting to transfer to that person. We want to make sure that our materials are visually stimulating. So adding pictures, adding colors, ways that we can kind of draw a person's eye to the material will be very helpful. Additionally, we want to make sure that our learners have opportunities to explore the information on their own. So this could be some homework that we give them. We talked about this particular way of managing this during our session. The homework is, I want you to go out and give it a try. Maybe you ask them to write down their experience. What was it like? What worked? What didn't work? And really giving them that opportunity to experiment on their own. We want to try to make it a conversation. So anytime we can encourage questions and discussions, the more people are going to engage. We might end up going completely off topic with a particular question or discussion item that comes up, and that's okay. That means that that's what that group needed right there in that moment. So we want to try to use that to guide the conversation, to make each session or each class a little bit different and a little bit unique. We don't need to be completely cookie cutter when it comes to offering a program. We can maintain that fidelity and still give people the opportunity to have those conversations and discussions. When possible, give feedback. And also on the other side of that, accept feedback. Find out from participants, how is this going? How does this feel? Is this working? And really get that feedback from them as well as giving the feedback. It seems like this particular activity is really engaging for everyone. Would you like to spend 5 more minutes on this discussion, or should we move on to the next thing? Offer encouragement. Many of us, myself included, really thrive on positive encouragement. And so when we can provide that positive encouragement to our learners, it can go a long way. Congratulating them on small successes is one great way to offer that encouragement. We also need to be flexible. So we know that sometimes we might need to pivot. We may have the best of intentions and a whole plan of how a particular session is going to go, and something might derail it. That's okay. We want to be flexible and make sure that we're able to pivot and meet that person's needs and that group's needs right then and there. We also want to show our passion. We do this work because it matters to us. Your participants should see that. Get excited about the things that you're teaching them and the things that you're doing together. Show that excitement. Be you in your experience of teaching so that you're seen as a real person who understands maybe what their experience has been like because you've been in a similar situation, or people see that you're excited and they're then going to get excited themselves. So make sure that when able to, you're showing that passion and excitement for the work that you're doing. And finally, when all else fails, we want to smile and have fun. I'd like to leave you today with this quote. Learning is the process whereby knowledge is created through the transformation of experience. In the PowerPoint presentation, you will find a list of multiple resources that I used to create this presentation. I hope that you will find this information to be helpful as you continue to build your skills around adult learning theory.